In this video, we are going to use the same variable replacements and just solve some different algebraic expressions below. So we have given a equals 8, b equals -6, d equals 3, x equals -4, and y equals a half. So those values are the same as our last video. We want to evaluate these expressions. So we have in parentheses 2a minus 5d and then squared. So let's replace our variables here. So I'm going to replace my a with 8. And when a number and letter are touching like so, that's multiply. So I have 2 times 8 minus 5 times d, which is 3. And then I want to square that. So with order of operations, I solve my parentheses first. And then within my parentheses here, I have multiply, subtract, and multiply. So I want to do my 2 multiplication pieces first. So 2 times 8 is 16. And 5 times 3 is 15. And then I want to square that. So 16 minus 15 is 1. And I could keep it in parentheses or drop my parentheses here. But 1 squared, remember, is the same as 1 times 1, which is just 1. Our next one looks very similar to our first one here. We just don't have those parentheses. So let's replace a and d with the values that were given. So 2 times 8 minus 5 times d, which is 3, squared. Okay, so notice I didn't use any parentheses here. And again, it doesn't matter if you did or didn't. It doesn't change the answer. It's just what you're more comfortable with. I could put my 8 in parentheses and my 3 in parentheses if that helps you see it. Like I mentioned, I really do encourage it, especially when negatives are involved. I think I'm more conscious of it when I have negative values that I'm replacing versus positives. But either way, we'll be okay in this example. So in this expression, I have multiplication, subtraction, multiplication, and exponents. So I have to solve my exponents first. So I'm going to do 2 times 8 minus 5 times 9. 3 squared is 9. So now here I have 2 times 8 minus 5 times 9. I can do my 2 multiplications next. So I have 16 minus 45. 16 minus 45. And this is great review again for integers. So I can rewrite this expression as 16 plus a negative 45, right? And now I really see I have more negatives because I have 45 negatives and only 16 positives. And how many more do I have would be 29. Okay? And if that's not obvious to you, over on the side here, you can just do 45 minus 16. Subtract those quick, and we get our 29, right? And then just remember to include the sign, right? Because we have more negatives here, our answer is going to be negative. Next, we have 2 times x plus y, where my x value is -4 and y is a half. So I have 2 times a -4 plus a half. So we actually did this pretty close on the first video. We have to do parentheses first. So a -4 plus a half is -3.5. And I'm timesing that by 2. So I have a positive times a negative, which yields a negative. And 2 times 3.5 is just like $3.50, right? 3.50 twice would be 7. So I have -7. One more thing I'd like to talk about, and this is where I keep mentioning this parentheses piece and why I'm kind of a advocate for placing your numbers around, placing parentheses around the value that you're replacing the variable with. So if you have a calculator, and most calculators, now I don't know what you have at home, but the GED calculator for sure, if I type this in as I see it, just a -5 squared, this yields a -25. This is a -25. Calculator tells us that's what it is. Versus if we typed this on the calculator, with parentheses around that -5, the calculator yields a 25. And the calculator I'm referring to is the TI-30XS, the one that you can use on the GED test. So I can't speak for all calculators across the board. It just kind of depends on what you have at home. But good news is we really need to understand this ourselves without a calculator. So I'm just going to rewrite here. If I have -5 squared, this square only applies to this base. It doesn't apply to the -5. That square is only attached to the 5, which 5 squared, I know you guys all know, is 25. And this parenthesis here really just comes down. So this could be read as, this -5 squared can be read as the opposite of 5 squared. That's how that could be read out loud. Okay, the opposite of 5 squared. Well, if 5 squared is 25, the opposite of that would be -25. Okay. Whereas this one here reads -5 squared. So the wording for these two are quite different. This is read as -5 squared. So this square right here is applied to the entire base because that parenthesis helps us know that we're squaring -5, right? Remember, when we're squaring a number, we're really timesing it by itself. So a -5 in parentheses squared is a -5 times a -5, and a negative times a negative gives us a positive. 5 times 5 is 25. So big difference here, right? -25 to 25. This is a topic that you will, I guarantee, I would bet my left hand on seeing this on the GED test. It's not just going to ask you this simple case, but it's going to ask you a question similar to this, where we're evaluating expressions and replacing the variable with a negative number where this situation kind of comes up. So something you definitely want to really wrap your head around and practice. In IXL, the more practice you guys do by evaluating expressions, just more reinforced order of operations is for you, and more reinforced order of operations and integers are also. So when you guys do the lessons in IXL, the very last lesson listed is evaluating expressions with whole numbers, decimals, and fractions. I totally am okay with you practicing that with a calculator, but I encourage you and challenge you to try it by hand, because then you're just reviewing fractions and decimals at the same time. So good luck in IXL, and of course, I'm here to answer any questions you have when we meet virtually.